What's up, everyone? Welcome back for a brand new edition of Collider Forces, a Sundance edition of Collider Forces. Before I introduce my guest, I have to say a big thank you to our sponsor this year, Rendezvous Capital. We are here at Sundance, of course, supporting indie cinema, but we're also supporting LA Wildfire Relief Live. It's an organization that is doing everything they can to support those impacted by the wildfires. So if you're able to donate, please head on over to lawildfirerelief.live. Thank you in advance for your support. Now, I have the great pleasure of introducing John Magaro on Collider Forces. I'm so excited to talk to you about...
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You have a lot of stuff to celebrate right now, but also... I love doing these kind of like roadmap conversations.
I love that too. There's nothing like reminiscing, you know?
Yeah, you've had a lot of good things to reminisce on. I want to make sure to bring up Wes Craven at some point.
Oh my God, yeah.
He's a big reason why I sit in this chair to this day.
Is that right? Well,
Scream's my
because like inspiration.
Scream's my second favorite movie of all time. And I feel like it was one of the first times I like processed the power of filmmaking in addition to just sitting in a seat and enjoying a story being told on screen, if that makes any sense.
Sure, yeah.
He's just the coolest.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, let's do it.
Before we get into any of the roadmappy type things, though, we play a game on Collider Forces. It's called Dicey Questions. Usually it involves a dice tower. The dice tower did not come to Park City, so you're going to pick your numbers today.
Ooh.
I have 8 random questions here, and I'm going to have you pick 3 numbers. So what is your first number, 1 through 8?
We'll go with 1 through 8.
1 through 8.
2.
All right, number 2. This is a nice one. We just call it inspiration. Can you tell me a recent movie or show you saw that, inspired you or gives you hope for the future of film and television?
Something that recently came out. Right now, I've been talking about Severance. I can't stop talking about Severance. I think it's, I think one of the hardest things to do in film and TV is to do something that is absurd in a way, but still grounded in realism. We just lost David Lynch, who was such a, one of the most brilliant at doing it. And I think with Ben Stiller and that gang over there at Severance, they're continuing that legacy and they're making really impressive and unique television.
My top priority after Sundance is to binge season 2, and I can't wait.
Totally.
Can't wait. All right, so that was your first pick. What is your second number?
We'll go with 5.
All right, number 5 is a big meaty acting question. It's called favorite, least favorite. I want to know your single favorite part of the acting process, like, putting a costume on, meeting your co-stars. But then I also want not necessarily your least favorite, but just a part of the process where you still see room to grow for yourself.
There's a lot more least favorites than favorites, unfortunately. But definitely the most favorite is when the camera's rolling and you're doing a scene. That's heaven. And especially when you hit it, like when you work with another actor and it just really clicks and you call cut, that you've just nailed it. There's nothing like that. That's the high of it. The least favorite, how much time do you got? Listen, these things, although they're cool, it's exhausting and it's a lot of work. Like I'm talking about Sundance, and I'm not great. Like I'm getting better, but I've always I have anxiety and some social anxiety, and so I've learned. I've been doing this a long time, so I've gotten better. But when I've been to Sundance 4 times, I remember the first times I came, I would just like sit in the corner having a drink against the wall, not talk to anyone. I was just so afraid.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, that element of it, and then as far as on set, the crazy hours are difficult. That's really tough.
Understandable. For what it's worth, whenever you see me at a film festival, I'm like happy in this space and I feel good here. If you ever saw me at a party, I am in the corner.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to be social.
Yeah, I like to do my work and then go and hibernate back in our air. I feel like our group here already knows it.
After the press today, I think I'm going to go back to the condo I'm staying at, just watch football and just chill.
Well, now I got to ask who you're rooting for.
Well, no one today. I'm a Steelers fan. They're out. So I'm just going to be watching just to see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I respect that.
Yeah.
All right. You got one more number to pick here.
We'll go with 7. Lucky number 7.
Number 7 is rap gifts. So what is the most memorable rap gift you've ever received or given?
The most memorable that I still wear to this day was during the film War Machine that David Michôd shot. Great David Michôd. Brad Pitt gave everyone beautiful watches. But Panerai watches, very expensive, and he had them all engraved with War Machine, the year. That's a pretty special gift. So the core, because it's like he's the general, and then we're all his underlings, his little entourage, and so everyone in that entourage he gave of these beautiful watches too.
I am a big fan of like a nice and useful gift like that.
Yeah.
Whenever we get our mailers, as long as it's like a sweatshirt or something for me to wear and stay warm, I'm like, yes.
Well, so when I get the like shirts and stuff like that, my father-in-law loves those, so I gift those to him. He lives in Korea and he rolls around with. In fact, my mother-in-law was wearing a past lives like thing in Korea, and she was at the gym, and someone came up and asked if she worked on it, and she's like, "No, my son-in-law did." So,
there's kind of a beautiful thing to get to tell.
Yeah,
Love that.
yeah.
All right, we've hit the meat of our interview. Every single Collider Forces conversation begins with this particular question.
Okay, here we
Can
go.
you tell me the movie you saw, the performance you saw, or personal experience you had that first made you say to yourself, "I absolutely have to be an actor"?
I mean, there's so many, and I've talked about this before, and I think as you do this, you continue to be inspired by new things. The very first thing that inspired me to be want to start the hobby of acting, because it was a hobby when I was younger. I saw a friend. I was in Cub Scouts. I was in 3rd grade. A kid in my Cub Scout troop did like the local Christmas play, Babes in Toyland, at the community theater. We went as a Cub Scout group and saw it. And after it, I went to my mom and said, I want to do that. And then the next year I auditioned for it. And that was the catalyst of the journey. Obviously, the motivations have changed. And there's been many actors and performances and films and theater and all sorts of stuff that has continued to inspire me. And I'm sure as I continue to do this, there will always be more things inspiring me.
That's the greatest thing about art. You learn and evolve and have to scratch new creative itches every single step of the way. It's the best.
Yeah.
So taking a step forward from that idea, you decide you want to pursue acting professionally. I've got 2 angles I want to hit
Well, that was much
from.
later, not at 3rd grade. I was a little older when I was like, maybe I can make this a job.
Well, we do have a good deal of time. I know we can't hit every single step, so I'm going to take a couple leaps here and there.
Yeah, let's jump ahead.
So
Fast forward.
I want to hit it from both the craft and the business perspective.
Yeah.
So first craft, you decide you want to be an actor, but I feel like making that decision and like feeling that you're meant for it, like in your bones, can be a different thing. So do you remember the very first time you did something that made you stop and go like shit, like I'm good at this and I deserve to be here?
I'm good at this. I deserve to be here. I think the first time that I felt like, okay, maybe this will work out was when I did a play in New York called Good Television at the Atlantic Theater. And that was a few years after I'd moved there. You know, for a long time, I felt that imposter syndrome. I didn't really feel like I belonged. They felt out of place. I would watch like the cool indie kids from the sidelines and, you know, be like, oh my God, it would be so cool to be like in that world. But then I got the opportunity to just play at the Atlantic, great theater company. And I really like pushed myself to new territory of acting in that role. And got really great feedback from the New York theater world and critics and things like that. And it was the first time, even though I continue to this day to have tons of self-doubt constantly, and I'm definitely my harshest critic. That was a moment where I'm like, okay, maybe I can do this for the long haul. Yeah.
Self-doubt is just like all too relatable.
Neuroses, self-doubt.
Yeah, I got a lot of those.
Anxiety.
Every time all of that kind of clouds my brain, I'm like, a lot of that concern comes from caring about what you do.
think so.
And if I didn't have those feelings, it was a sign I didn't care. And then what am I doing here anymore?
I think, well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, especially like this career, and like it's the cliche, but like if you can do something else or if you have any other thing, like this is a hard profession. But like, even in that self-doubt phase, I still had the motivation to like, I got to get better. I got to figure this out. I got to, you know, and it's still part of that journey. Yeah.
Speaking of how hard it is, so the other half of that is like the business side of things. So you decide you want to be a professional actor. At that point, what did you think was step 1 to making that dream a reality? And now having done it, would you recommend that first step to another aspiring actor, or did you find something more effective?
The first step, I mean, in a lot of ways, when you move to like New York or LA, I don't know if like kids, you know, young actors do this anymore. You print out a shitload of headshots, you print out a shitload of resumes, and you spent days stapling them together and sending them out to like any person who's willing to look at it. That's how, I mean, I guess it's all digital now. Like you probably just like send it out on an email or something. But that was like, you know, the first few months in New York, that it was just like knocking on doors. I mean, that's how, you know, my first on film experience was an extra in Munich, which is, you know, weirdly coincidental with September 5, but that was just sending headshots and resumes to like background people, just wanting to get your foot in any way possible. But I think the business, that it's just that persistence, and I'm sure maybe it's not exactly the same for young actors now, but there's the component of like knocking on every door, hounding people, fighting for any opportunity. Yeah.
Persistence is important.
Yeah.
As promised, I'm kind of taking another big leap here to start to get into some of your earliest credits.
Okay.
This is a big question. Of all of the earliest shows and films that you were in, do you remember the very first one that kind of made you feel seen in this industry the way that you wanted to? Like, this project and my work in it, like, shows off what I'm capable of in a way that makes me proud.
Definitely not Fade Away. David Chase's film. It was David Chase's first film after The Sopranos. He directed, he wrote it, he cast me as the lead. It was under Paramount Vantage, the defunct Paramount Vantage. And it was a huge opportunity. Seldom seen film, but people who love it really do love it. And I continue to talk to filmmakers and producers and writer, you know, like journalists who bring it up and talk about how they still love that film. That really pushed me. It was after I kind of discovered a new approach to acting, just being more true to myself as an actor instead of trying to do what I thought was expected.
That happened on that film?
It happened right before that. Okay. Like, I had auditioned for Not Fade Away, and I had a callback, and I shit the bed at the call. Like, I was just doing what I thought needed to be done. And then in that 6 months, I started like being more true to myself. And then David came back around and called me back again. And then at that point, I got the job. And yeah, that was the first time it felt different, and I felt like I was really being true to myself as an actor.
That might lean into this. I had written this down from something you said in another interview, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit with this, but do you remember the very first moment when you recognized that it was much more important for you to be an artist rather than a movie star?
That was always pretty clear. Like, I never expected to be a movie star. I still don't expect to be a movie star. I thought when I graduated from college, I thought I would be like doing regional theater. That's what I knew. You know, I grew up in Ohio. I had no one in my family is in film or television or quite frankly is artistic in any way. But it was in college, that's where I think I realized I wanted to approach this artistically, and because that's the first time I understood it could be that. You know, up until college, I have very limited knowledge of cinema and film, but while there, I read so many great plays, I watched so many great films, and really discovered that it can be something so much more than just entertainment. And I left school kind of with that in mind, just in theater, and then that sort of translated to my film career.
It's a beautiful thing that happens. It's like what I was telling you about Wes Craven earlier. Like there's something about Scream where when I was watching that movie, like both parts of movie watching and loving and making, like it all clicked. The fact that it could be a story that I could get lost in, but also that like creative geniuses are like making this thing happen before
Wes
my
was
eyes.
Such a brilliant, he was a brilliant mind, and that opportunity to do that film, that film there's a few people who like it, most people don't, but that I was such a baby, and that was before I really understood. Like, that's before I sort of changed my approach to everything. But I was just so green on that set. I was so happy to be there. It was a great experience, but I was just like wide-eyed. I didn't know what to do, but he was so kind, and he was really brilliant, very smart man, very, very intelligent man.
So smart. And so that was the first time I ever spoke to him, and because I'm such a big fan, I was shaking in my boots, and the second I walked in that room, he just radiated warmth, then immediately put me at ease, and I will always appreciate qualities like that.
He had those things.
This is kind of like a little adjacent to what we've been talking about, but like obsessed with the idea of breaking out in Hollywood, mainly because like, what the fuck does it even mean?
Yeah, I know, right?
But also in your case, because it seems like with everything you do, and you've done so much over the course of your career, everything is called a breakout. So it made me wonder, for you, what do you think feels like your breakout project, the thing that made the difference that you wanted it to?
I don't know. I don't know if there is one. It's more like a ladder or steps than like breakout. I think it's hilarious that Karen Calkin this year just got like the breakout actor at Palm Springs. It's like, dude has been doing it for over 30 years. And it's just, so like, that's why that term is so loaded and kind of absurd.
I ask about it all the
like
time.
It's kind of an absurd thing because like maybe some people I think you break out with certain groups and you have like, because people watch different things. So if you're an actor who's trying to do different stuff, then you constantly are having like breakout moments with different groups. So I wouldn't even say I've had a breakthrough moment. I just think it's a journey, and I've been very lucky that I've been able to keep going up and not go backwards. But I still feel like there's so many people who have no clue. I just got Michael Aragano. I just got like, I constantly get confused. Some guy came up to me on the street and was like, Michael. I'm like, I'm not.
Oh no.
Like, you know, there's a long way to go. But I'm more, like we said, it's more about the art. It's more about doing good work, and we'll see where this lands.
All right, so I'm going to lean into like kind of going up and up, but in terms of acting techniques, because one of the reasons why I love having these conversations is because like the art you do fascinates me, because there's countless approaches to this kind of work. So I'll go two routes with this. The first one is one of my favorite questions to ask. It's a big question.
Yeah.
Of all the actors you've ever worked with, can you name someone who has a most similar approach to the work as your own, where like the second you met, you were immediately in sync? But then I also kind of want the opposite, someone who challenged you and maybe challenged you to adapt and try something new.
The most similar is probably James Gandolfini. I mean, he's like an inspiration. We work together. We work with the same coach, Harold Guskin, who's passed. Now I work with his wife, Sandra Jennings. So very similar approach, very honest, very open for surprise, open for discovery, but very grounded and real. And I think Jim was probably one of the best at doing that from the modern era. So him. As far as the closest, the most different, you know, like I had a limited work with Jeremy Strong on The Big Short, and he approaches it, at least at that time, differently than I do. But I mean, it's intriguing to see. It's just a different style. And I think I think the lesson of that is there's no formula. And I think you shouldn't subscribe to what you think is a formula. As an actor, you really have to discover your own process. It's such a difficult question because the spectrum is so vast, and everyone approaches it differently. And as long as you're there and supporting your castmates and not being selfish, then it doesn't really matter how you get there. So like young actors, you need to discover your own. Don't like subscribe to like one ideology or another. Just discover your own way.
And also be open to like finding something that works for you and letting it evolve. So I'll lean into that next and talk about your technique personally. Is there any, and it doesn't have to be like an official acting technique, but is there any specific thing that you've been doing when tackling your work since day one, like something you've always held tight to, but then maybe also a technique you've tried more recently for the first time?
The thing that I always do is find a core inspiration, and that could be anything. That could be a painting, it could be a picture, it could be learning a new skill, it could be you know, a song. I always have to have like that anchor, and then out of that comes everything else. But every single role I've had, I find that anchor, and then I build outside of it. But as far as like technique, I have ideas, and I go over ideas with my coach, and we have plans. But at the end of the day, it's about being on set and being completely open. Because the thing about film is it's constantly changing. Your day changes. You might think you're going to shoot a scene that day, you don't shoot it. So it's kind of like best laid plans of mice, but you can't really over prepare. I think it's better to be very confident, know where you're standing, and then roll with the punches on the day.
I'm curious if learning a new skill is maybe the answer to this question, but to start to lean into September 5 a little here, can you tell me something about your prep process for a role that always stays the same, but then also something about playing Jeff Mason in that movie that called for something different?
Yeah, so the prep process was like getting for all sorts of inspiration, talking to people, watching things, but then it was going into the control rooms and learning how to call a live broadcast that really like centered where I'm at in this performance, and discovered who that guy was. And that was, 2 months of research and really learning the rhythms of those control rooms. It was a really cool experience, such a privilege to do. And I didn't know if that was going to be the end, but it really became the end for the character.
It's such a fascinating thing to be able to learn, because like that approach to that kind of work does not exist anymore. I'm so grateful that I had a period of time where like I got in the door somewhere when they still had like a little bit of tape to tape editing left, just so I could at least like have hands on and, some sort of like firsthand understanding of what it took to make that happen.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, that film is such a, analog porn, basically. Like it's just like all that stuff, that 2-inch reel to reel, the buttons, the rotary phone, like it's just such a,
So even if something you learned about what it takes to make a live broadcast like that happens is not in the finished film, is there anything that you learned that I guess just like really wowed or surprised you?
Oh man, I think I used it. I think the focus, the adrenaline of that room, I mean, was the most surprising thing about it. And the quickness of these, like you have so many screens and you have to keep going, and you have to put you'll watch a football game today, and the amount of focus and skill it takes to piece that puzzle together in real time is just completely fascinating. I mean, really, really intriguing.
It is a whole other art form.
Yeah, it really
to be able to anticipate
like
where the viewer's eye needs to be to see and understand everything.
It's like conducting. It's like conducting an orchestra in a way. It's so surprising, and it really is an art. And I think most people don't realize that about that. You take it for granted. You turn on the news or you turn on a sports game, and you take for granted what's happening to get this into your house.
And the process has evolved, but like there's still so many little details that nobody stops to think about. That's why these organizations need gigantic teams that know every single ounce of what they're doing. It's something else.
Totally.
I wanted to follow up on something I was reading you said about September 5 in another interview, because I was reading about how you all wound up getting the archival footage. And when you got that footage, it meant that, I think these are your exact quotes, I might change a little bit, you would sometimes have to rewrite the scenes even more because you had to play with what you had. And you just called that an amazing challenge. So can you give me an example of a scene where that happened, where you were evolving on the spot?
Yeah, and basically every time we had the footage, because it was until 2 weeks before that we got the actual footage.
I could not get over that.
So we get this footage. Moritz and Tim went back and tried to apply it, and they rewrote a few sequences doing that. But the thing is, we didn't really know what was going to be on the screens until the day, because that was in the hands of our video editors, and they were piecing these things together. So before we do a scene, let's talk the scene where I noticed that there might be a TV in one of the rooms. So we didn't know what that sequence was going to be until we get there on the day. Then we all watch it, and then you look at the script and you're like, well, this isn't what's happening on the screen. So because I had done the prep, we could look at this, and then we could map out how I would have to call these shots. Like, okay, now we need to go to the tower cam. Now we need to go to cam 1. And that wasn't written out because we didn't know what the footage was going to be. So yeah, pretty much every time we had one of those kinds of sequences in September 5, we would have to look at what we had and rewrite the scene to be accurate to the calling of the show.
How you all made that movie is really something else, and the finished product.
Oh, thank you.
My personal opinion.
I'm really happy that
deserves even more credit than it got.
Thank you. But I'm glad the Academy recognized Tim and Moritz. I know they're both over the moon right now. Oh. Yeah.
Everyone should be very proud of what you accomplished with that. And the same is true of Omaha, which was phenomenal. It is the reason why you're at Sundance right now. Something else. The three of you are something else. So I'll start there. What is something a veteran actor did for you in the past that you really appreciated and made sure to do for young actors like Molly and Wyatt in this movie?
I'm gonna go back to Jim Gandolfini. He on Not Fade Away, a really important scene where he's my father and we're having this dinner and he's telling me that he might leave my mother, and it's just like a really devastating scene, and it's emotional for the character. And to get me there, he did this thing where he kept kind of repeating the line and letting me say it over and over again. It's kind of like a Meisner-ish technique. But for a young actor, it really lets you strip away all the cameras and really focus on the words and focus on the scene. And that's something I would do for Molly in particular. Wyatt to some degree. Wyatt was sort of like, he did his thing and we rolled with him.
He's very young.
He's very young.
She's still very young, but she's like
so
a
beyond.
pro.
She's a pro. Oh, she is a pro. She's gonna be getting an Oscar probably
I would
in
believe
a few
it.
years. So I would do that with her a lot and let her really, because at first, it was kind of her first big role. She has done stuff, but she did like a TED Talk. Do you know that? A TED Talk.
I'm sorry, she did like
She's
her
like
own
the youngest
TED Talk?
person to do a TED Talk. Yeah. So
we all
she's
know
like
what I'm going to watch right
a
after
prodigy.
this.
But this was one of her first film experiences. And I remember the first time I was on, I did a TV show called, I forget, Conviction. It was like a Dick Wolf show. And the first time the camera was on me and the door opened and the other actor, the like real actor in the show, I had like 2 lines. The door opens and I was just like, froze, like went to the white space, we call it. Like I had forgot all my lines, forgot everything. Then you realize on film you can just do it again. But like, early as we started shooting, I sensed that sort of like, there's all these cameras around, like this is what I'm supposed to do. And I really wanted to like help her push all that stuff aside and just focus on our relationship. And so what Jim did for me, I started to apply to her.
I still can't get over her performance in this
so
movie.
good,
It's something else. So we always focus on, what it's like for the more experienced actor to give some wisdom to the younger actors, but it goes both ways. So what is something about the two of them that, I guess inspired you or maybe helped you find something new in your own craft, given the fact that they were jumping in like blank slates a little bit?
They reminded me the joy of it because they're so, like, even them being here, like I'm a little old and jaded, and like this is my 4th Sundance, but like the joy in their eyes being here is really inspiring. And with Wyatt in particular, like I like to improv. I like to like mess around. I like to make every take different. I like to discover things. And with a 6-year-old, that's the only option. You're rolling with him, and like I never knew what Wyatt was gonna do. Like it might be a scene where he's not sad and he'd be sad because he was just done for the day, or it might be a scene that's supposed to be sad and he was all going crazy. But it really makes you roll with the punches and like be there with him, and we really like just would have discoveries that, and really like special moments. There's a scene when we're eating like burgers and like he starts talking about like dog food is made from like cow buttholes and stuff like that. Like that's just him rolling with it, and then I'm rolling with what he's saying, and it helps like having a kid. I have a daughter, so it helps being comfortable around that. Not to say that you couldn't have done it without having a kid, but you naturally as a father, you sort of know how to roll with that kind of unexpectedness. I don't know, like it's a wild card. But yeah, they're really beautiful kids, and we really bonded on that.
My niece and nephews are training me in that respect.
Yeah.
I definitely can like talk their kind of talk.
You got to talk the talk. Yeah.
Yep. For you personally in this movie, I'm curious, what do you find more challenging for yourself? Doing scenes where your character is essentially like wearing a facade and carrying around all this great emotion, or something like maybe towards the end where it's all flooding out?
It's all hard. The thing about the like flooding out, like where you're going. Like so I would actually say the holding back, because that's a scary place. And we kind of do that on September 5 because you don't know if the audience is gonna, I like to trust an audience will get it, but you don't know if the subtlety is gonna stick. Like when you're crying and you're bawling your eyes out, it's very clear what you're going through. But when you're putting on the facade, it might be a little more tough to relay that to an audience. So yeah, that's a frightening place.
You do that exceptionally well in this film.
you.
Really, just like overwhelmingly so. I
Thank
hope
you.
you feel the sincerity I say that with.
Thank you so much.
I want to touch on 2 upcoming projects.
Okay.
The agency getting renewed is a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
and
they just had the finale a couple nights ago.
last night, the night before.
No, what day is it?
I feel like it was very
What day
recently.
is it today? Where are we?
Don't ask me questions
What's
I don't know the
happening?
answer to.
I don't know. It was recently.
Correct
Yeah.
me if I'm wrong on this bit of information, but I believe with that getting renewed, it marks your first time having a main role on a series where you're going to get to continue your character's journey going
Yeah, because
forward.
Umbrella Academy, I only signed on for the first season. I was the villain on the first season. And then Orange is the New Black, I came in and like guest starred or whatever every once in a while. Yeah, this is the first, so this is new territory for me. But it's a great group. I love that group. I love Fassbender. I love Jeffrey, Richard, Jody, Ambry. Like, it's such a great group. And the people who are running the show, David and Grant, and George Clooney, the George Clooney.
Who?
It's really good. And Showtime has been really, pushing it. And it's been really nice here because I've been running into people, and not just like people in the business, like just, cops and security people on the street and things like that who are like, I'm watching The Agency. I really love it. So it's exciting to hear that.
What does it mean to you to get the opportunity to continue to develop that character? And is there any, itch that making season 1 left that you are hoping you get to scratch with season 2?
I'm just excited to see where Owen goes. I really like playing him. He's a fun character. I like the arc of his, he's starting from such a befuddled, place, and then by the end kind of taking the reins and getting a little more confident in his role. And so I'm excited to see him advance in his career as being more savvy as a CIA, handler. But I also hope some of his humor, I like that he offers humor, and I like that he offers, what I love about the show is that it's not like CIA James Bond. Like, it shows the neuroses. It shows, which is what I loved about The Sopranos. It shows the neuroses of like these mobsters. And I like that Owen offers that because, there are people in that who, they're humans. It's a human business at the end of the day. So I like that quality of The Agency, and I'm excited to go back.
Oh, yeah. I will totally agree with that. I've got 2 more questions for you. One more
go on.
upcoming project, and then the last question we always end a forces with. So the next thing I want to ask you about is The Bride. And I know you've been talking about it a little bit recently, and I wanted to follow up on one thing you said, and I don't know if you can give me the answer to this, but let's try. So I think in one of your last interviews, I'm going to read it to make sure I get all of these
All
things.
these quotes Ring brought up.
I do my homework.
I
I'm
know.
always prepared.
Hey, all right.
You described it as a combo of Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers movie, Young Frankenstein, Bonnie and Clyde, and Badlands. Are you able to?
And that's just a few. There's probably even
I
more
bet.
stuff I could add in. Yeah.
Is there any particular place that your character falls in that kind of
All
like multitude of comps?
All the characters fall into all of that at some point. Like, less so some of us are in the Fred Astaire thing, but there's moments where we all go into each of these worlds, and it is, I'm talking about the main cast. Yes. So, but all of the main cast lives in all of those genres.
I'm so excited.
It's fucking wild.
I don't know if you can answer this, but again, I will try. Is there any particular acting first you were able to do making that movie, given it sounds like such a unique combination of what we've seen before?
The acting first that I'm going to point out is there was a scene towards the end of the film that we were shooting, and there's a lot of actors in the room, and it was Christian Bale, Jesse Buckley, Penelope Cruz, Annette Bening, and Jeannie Berlin, and me. All Oscar winner nominees, and then me. So it was pretty intense to do a scene with, Jeannie Berlin, legend from Heartbreak Kid, and all these other great, Jesse, now one of the rising great actors of our day. And that was surreal. And I feel like the nerves have kind of slid away. I've been doing this now for 20 years, so it's a little different now for me when I go on set. But that day I couldn't help but feel a little like, this is fucking crazy.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm so excited to see it.
Yeah.
So this is always our final question of Collider Forces. I'll ask it as it pertains to Omaha, because that's what you're here in Park City celebrating right now. And again, exceptional film. I find in this industry that we all love giving each other awards, and that is super cool. Everyone should keep doing that.
So many awards.
So many awards. Nobody tells themselves good job as much as they should, though. I want to know something you accomplished making Omaha that you know you're always going to be able to look back on and say, you know what? I'm really proud of what I did there.
I mean, I'm just really proud of like the whole thing. And I'm glad I took the risk on Cole. Cole had never done a feature before. And Chris Blauvelt, great cinematographer, called me. He's like, take a chance. And the script was really solid, but you still don't know. I'm glad I took that risk because this movie, I mean, I really am so proud of it. I'm so happy that people are responding the way they have been. It really let me show another side of myself as an actor. So I feel very fortunate for that. And I really can't wait for people to see it. Yeah.
You should be so proud of your
Thank
work
you.
and that your instincts were spot on. I'm glad you picked to jump in on that one.
Thank you.
I'm going to say congratulations on everything you've accomplished
Thank
on
you so
September 5 in Omaha and everything coming your way in the future. Hurry up and come back to Collider Forces
Can't
soon.
wait. Thank you so much. Thank you.